Whether you're a new real estate investor just taking down your first property or an experienced veteran with thousands of units under your belt, operating your multifamily deal is the make or break point for building wealth. Welcome to this Property Operations Miniseries, part of the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast. This miniseries is hosted by my friend Jack Petrick and, of course, by me, Agostino Pintus, the host of Bulletproof Cashflow. In this miniseries, we'll cover what you do after you take down that deal and what it's going to take to become a successful property owner that you want to be. So let's go ahead and get into the show. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. This is Agostino. I have Jack Petrick on as well. So another key aspect from the last episode, we were talking about how to bring on a property manager. And a big part of also continuing on that theme is lease ups. Leasing is one of those key aspects that can, again, make or break your asset, your property. And only because many people, they try to skimp on their underwriting. And if you've caught some of the other Bulletproof Cashflow shows, underwriting, whether you're underwriting a deal or underwriting a tenant, is super, super important. And we'll get into what that means as far as underwriting a tenant is concerned. But it all has to do with lease up, right? And conceivably, when we've taken over some properties anyway, they'll be at 96, 97% occupancy. And on the first day we close, 10 people leave, and that's because the previous person, they just did heads on beds, just throw some people in there, get the occupancy up, make the bank happy, everybody's kosher. And next thing you know, you're at 86% now, right? So now what do you do?
Rent roll doesn't mean rent ledger. And I know someone just made this mistake. They looked at the rent roll and it shows a head and a bed and shows what they should be paying. But then once they went to collect rents for the first month, 15% of those tenants, they haven't paid in months. So that's what we're talking about, economic vacancy. Now you have to pay money to hire an attorney to evict them. And now you have to turn over 15 units right now that you weren't planning on and then pay a leasing agent. So
that's right.
We got to mention that.
That's right. And that part is huge, because very few people look at the rent ledger. Even fewer people, they'll get all the leases and they won't go through 150 leases to see if they're all on month to month. It's not sexy, unfortunately. But you know what? Someone's got to do it. It's because if you don't, you're gonna get hammered, because again, you'll have your vacancy will drop by 15 people, regardless of if you did anything wrong or not. I mean, it happened on one of our deals too, where we had 5 people just suddenly leave. It's like, did we do something? Did we miss something? No, they're just heads on beds. That's all. No problem. The rents are a little bit low, so it's like that means we anticipate such things at this point. So we'll go in, we'll throw the extra money into the unit, crank up the rents, fine. Not a big deal. But
crews line up the material and the knowledge that's coming. If the deal's tight and you think you're just going to walk in day one and you're going to maintain the occupancy and just collect checks, that's not the reality.
That's right. It never happens that way. And so when it comes to underwriting an actual tenant, okay, so this is probably one of the biggest aspects when it comes to, again, making or breaking, because if you find a great tenant, you want to keep that person happy. And how do you find a great tenant? I mean, as far as the underwriting that we do, and I think Jack, I think you might do things a little differently. Maybe it's the same, but we look for background checks, and we're looking for a criminal background or anything else like that. If they had that, we typically won't accept them. Sex offenders, things like that. We limit, or better yet, we don't even allow those people into any of our properties. Only because if your daughter was going to move into one of our assets, would she really want to live next door to a sex offender? Sorry, guys. Sure. No offense to sex offenders out there. I'm not hating on you, but you know what? It's a business, unfortunately. So that's just how it is, right?
And when we buy a property, we're inheriting those tenants. So we haven't had the time to do those background checks. You're inheriting the existing tenants. So a couple things we'll do right off the rip is, I mentioned one of the earlier podcast episodes is, when we close on a property, we'll contact the police department. We'll ask for a records request for the last year of calls to that property. So that's the first thing we're going to do. If somebody is under lease and we're having an issue, depending on the severity of the issue, sometimes we can still move forward with a 3-day eviction notice because, well, 30-day notice followed by a 3-day notice if it's a lease violation is one option. Sometimes we have to wait for them to move out, and sometimes we just got to have a conversation with them depending on what it is. But that's the only way to really be aware of what's going on. Second thing we'll do is we will get all the names of the tenants, and we'll go in the local municipal court, and this is a free search, and have one of your assistants or one of your helpers do this if you don't have the time. But look up everybody individually and see what comes up. There is so much you're going to find by doing that. It's a free search because you're not going to pay $25 to do a record search on everybody that's in that building already. And just get a feel for what you're working with, because you don't want any blind sides when you get into that, when you close that property. Because bad tenants, drug activity, things of that will deter good tenants from moving into your property when you have renovated nice units. Like a lot of times we have to change the reputation of that property in that area. We do that by remodeling, but we also do that by changing over the tenant base of who we have in that property. So that's something that's really critical to do. Yeah. Once we go in the process of screening tenants, we will absolutely be doing a full background check. Now, one thing that's been helpful for us is when I initially started this business, I was buying houses in C-class areas at the bottom of the market for like $4,000. Like it was a gold mine. But I wasn't running them out of $4,000. We were putting 30 into them, but I mean, we had beautiful houses, but there were still areas that kind of fallen out of grace a little bit, And so we're going to be dealing with more challenging tenants. So one of the things that's been a blessing for us is we finally learned after a long time to do a pre-check on somebody before they came onto the property. So this is what would happen prior to doing that. Somebody would call, love the property, or talk it up. They would show up. Every time a tenant shows up, they're on their best behavior. They always are. And you don't really know what you're dealing with till after the fact. So we waste our time. We do a walkthrough. We do a background check. And we find out they've got a list this long of evictions and everything else. We just wasted our time. Like we would have never went to this extreme if we had known that. Of course, we've asked the person if they had X, Y, and Z, and they said no, and they lied. I'm sure, Agostino, you've dealt with this too. With your team.
Oh, no, they never lie. They're always telling the truth, for sure.
Exactly.
That's sarcasm. That's sarcasm, guys.
So one of the things we did on those areas that are more challenging is we will send over a Google Forms link for what we call an appointment check, an appointment form. So they will put the first, last name. We will take that information. We'll do a quick pre-screen on the local municipal court. And if they have a rap sheet that long and it's happening every other month, we don't want to waste our time to have the appointment because we're just wasting our time. Now, that's really not going to be necessary when we are in B and A class communities, but if you're not in those markets, that's something that will help save your time. In B class markets, like we really don't do that because it's really not that necessary because we don't have that pool of candidates. If you are in a more challenging area, another thing to be really cautious though is that I take seriousness is people that have a history of domestic violence. I've had some of my worst situations in properties because of domestic violence. So that's just something that we do really pay attention to that. Another thing to be concerned about, and we've had this too, again, in C-class markets, is we will have an application that's being filled out by a niece or a daughter or somebody that's got a clean background check, but they move their entire family in. So oftentimes we will try to also do a court search on family members and go a little bit deeper because 10 more minutes of taking time the front end is going to save you thousands and thousands of dollars on the back end. When you have a bad tenant, we have to evict them, there's a lot of damages. You can get a judgment, but more times than not, you're not going to collect on it.
Yeah, you'll never get that money out.
All of that money is just going to be a complete. So those are things that we're going to do more in C-class markets because of challenges. And again, if you're in a C-class market, you have to have higher returns because you have a higher risk on that investment. That's just how it is. When we get into B-class markets, we can manage 500 B-class properties for the effort of 100 C-class units because it's just that much easier. So I really, if you're getting into this, even though the returns on C-class properties look so much better, what the performance says and what you collect are two different numbers. B-class markets for sure a lot easier. When we're looking at third party leasing options, typically the compensation is going to be a full month's rent is typically what's going to be compensated if you have a sole independent third party leasing agent. The problem with this arrangement is that person is 100% sales driven. They're only compensated by performance of putting a head in a bed. And what I've experienced is oftentimes the decisions and the standards of what we're looking for are not the standards of what they're looking for. Because they're looking for a check to get somebody in the property. And as you mentioned earlier, when we bought properties and we've had a bunch of people just clear out, what happened was the previous owners just put heads in the beds. So the time has got to be spent on getting the right tenants. I've made the mistake of just putting a head in the bed years ago because I wanted the revenue to come in, and the amount of frustrations and money lost in the back end just don't justify it. You really got to be able to be really carefully screen your tenants. One last thing on that subject, when I screen tenants, everybody makes mistakes. I've made mistakes. Everybody has. So if people have made a mistake in the past, there's an explanation, there's been a time gap, I definitely give my property managers and leasing agents some wiggle room on that. And if it's questionable, I ask that they just call me so we can talk it through. I'm not looking for somebody that's perfect, because none of us are. But there's a difference between making mistakes in the past and somebody that's consistently in the courts or consistently getting arrested. You're probably not going to be changing those habits.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So, but another big aspect when it comes to getting the tenants is actually getting them in the first place, right? So how do you market to these people, right? And that's, I find the two primary ways that we do it anyway is Facebook Marketplace and apartments.com, right? So Facebook Marketplace, totally free. It's awesome, right? As far as just putting the ad out there and getting some traction, it's great. If you boost those ads, it's turned into like, God, if you write the ad properly, you put up some good photos, you even put up some nice videos. That way, you'll weed out some of those people to show up and then burn up your manager's time. That's a great way to engage and get some good tenants. Not to mention too, the people that apply, they have to use their Facebook profile. If you click on their profile,
yep,
and it says like it has a whole bunch of stuff about how they drama in their life,
weekend and partying, getting trashed, they're probably not going to be too reliable for employment. Their employment's going to lack their income, and they're not going to be able to pay rent.
Right. I mean, there's actually one person I saw that said, I hate my landlord. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. So it's no wonder, it's like, if they're going to hate them, they're probably going to hate you. Right. And of course, I mentioned apartments.com. Now, apartments.com is not cheap, but it does have good reach as well. And they syndicate, I believe, the property. So those two, but I'm a real big believer in Facebook. I mean, the whole Facebook thing is just huge. It's just huge.
And what do we do on that too? Just to wrap on that, we get a really detailed description about the property, and everything we can point out about it is the more you have to be a salesman to sell your property. Often, again, if you have a third-party option that's running these ads, read the description. Is that a description that would intrigue you to go there? Because if not, you have to get involved with it. Second thing, we always have professional photos of the property. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. It costs us $75 to send a professional photographer out and get amazing edited photos. It's absolutely foolish to take your cell phone in there with no lighting, have a bunch of dark photos with shadows, and present that or represent that as your property. Like every day that property is not rented, you're losing money every single day. We have a checklist. Well, again, Facebook has been an amazing source for us. I use Appfolio for property management software, and that will blast out to a whole bunch of sites. So we definitely have to have an online presence, but on top of it, the old school stuff still works. Like we still have people today that are renting a property because there's a for rent sign in the front yard. So like, don't forget that stuff too. People sometimes will be driving past the property because they live in that area and will see it. So like, I think the key to it is putting together, again, a checklist and consistently hitting those points. And if you delegate the work to somebody, making sure and checking up that they're doing it, and just do a spot check on it as well.
That's right. That's right. And video, guys, video. If you're going to have someone there taking pictures, like get a pro, like Jack just said, have them shoot some video too. Again, if you're able to get some video stuff. People are engaging with video now. That's why if you're on YouTube and you're watching this, that's why you're watching it, right? And if you're able to wean out or get rid of the people that are not really going to be that interested, and because they saw the video, fine, great. It's such a huge time saver, huge time saver.
Sure.
So
I would say too, like, secret shop your property. Pull it up, read the ad, look at the photos. There was one time I was looking up one of her listings, and Zillow made a mistake and took all of her photos and put them little tiny like thumbnail images.
man.
That's useless. So like,
Yeah.
would have been caught if we assumed it was working, but it wasn't. So again, putting together a checklist, making sure you get professional photos, you have the right description, going and actually checking those ads to make sure that they're looking correctly. Another thing, call the phone number. We've made the mistake before. We're off by a digit. Nobody can get a hold of you. And you wonder why it doesn't lease. So like, run through that process, that checklist, and does the place look good? Is it presentable? Are the hallways clean? Like, when people come in, they're examining and judging the building by the exterior appearance, the parking lot, walking through your common areas, the smells, the odors. So like, those are things you have to be involved in order, or somebody in your team has to be accountable to do that, to ensure that's being done. And again, if you assume it's being done and you're not checking it, you're going to get in trouble.
Yes. So one final thought. Keep in mind, guys, this is advice that Jack and I use, right? This is not legal advice. Make sure that whatever you do out there, if you don't violate any fair housing laws or anything else like that,
Yes.
right? That's a big deal. Don't do that. that can lead you to a whole bunch of problems, right? There's certain ways of handling certain scenarios. Okay.
Yes, there is.
Yep. Yes, there is. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for joining us on this mini episode here. We got some more stuff coming up here. If you have any questions that you want us to answer on the air, www.bulletproofcashflow.com. You'll see a little widget there to say ask a question. You click that, you can speak your question right into the website. And if we use your question on the air, you're going to get a free gift. It's totally awesome. I'm so psyched up about it. It's going to be great when you see it. All right, guys, thank you so much for your time. And we're going to see you on the next one. All right.